y'all doing? Y'all gonna be so sporadic. Y'all can kind of condense in a little bit unless y'all want to be that far. But I hope you guys are enjoying the summit thus far. We are gonna have a little bit of a deeper conversation. And just to start, as we begin this powerful dialogue, I want to anchor us in the truth that youth are not the future, they are the present. And advocacy without inclusion is just a performance. Today, we dig deeper. So I hope you guys just join me on this journey. And for my first questions, I have individual questions for each panelist. So if you want to do, in a mixture of answering that question, a little brief introduction for the sake of time, we can do that. Cool? Awesome. My first question is for Saba. You've led with integrity and lifting up voices from foster care and beyond through the Park West Foundation. In your decades of work, how have you seen the landscape of youth advocacy shift, and what has remained stubbornly unchanged despite our best efforts?
Good question. I will give an example of this computer design that Penny Richards, when she was a senior in high school, she was a foster youth in Detroit public school. And when she was a senior in high school, she came up with an idea of why don't we digitize the child welfare system so what we are saying can give us voice and we can interact with the system and they can see exactly what we're saying. We can also see what we have, what are those resources and the services, and we can in real time communicate. So this was in 2018, and we had a meeting with the Department of Health and Human Services. And there was a shock, the response from the team was like, the youth want to be in this computer system that we use that has sensitive information? And the youth are like, yes, give us 2 weeks with your IT team and we could show them how we could not get everybody's money when we use our online banking, or if we apply for FAFSA, we will not get all the federal dollars that are allowed for college students. We can only access our own, so we can also compartmentalize systems. But over time, after multiple meetings, that idea was accepted in 2020. And youth were also hired, which was also part of the ask. And the system currently is being designed according to that. So definitely, the current administration is very wide open, like completely different than the shock that we experienced initially. But again, there are systemic issues and we're aware. And then there's the federal guideline that is not only insisting, but mandating that lived expertise must be at the table in matters that affect youth. It just gives more power. So we're elated where we are today compared to where we've come from, where we were able to get direct shock from the ideas that youth were proposing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christine, your role as a youth organizer isn't just about raising awareness. It's about activating change at the grassroots. What system barriers have you had to fight through just to be heard? And what strategies have proven most effective in sustaining your advocacy in a world not always designed for your voice?
Hello, my name is Christine, as you heard. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and when I was in middle school, my parents moved to Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor area, and that environment and culture was very different for me, coming from a big family of 11. So a lot of barriers that I faced was the lack of resources that my family had or that I had as a student, and a lack of access to the resources. And I started seeing some of that growing up from middle school to high school because I see that it was more need in my family and to my peers on just healthcare, special needs support, or someone to just advocate for us on just civil things as rights for students. So So the other part of that question is how we dismantle that or how we work against the barriers.
So, what strategies have proven to be most effective in sustaining your advocacy in a world not always designed for your voice?
Okay, so I would say mainly building people power. I have to lean on my support to, maintain that advocacy work. I'm not gonna do that work alone. So I have to collaborate with other like-minded people, organizations, and make sure I maintain that support and build our people power, because I could continue to advocate for my needs or other peers' needs, but I have to educate the community so we can advocate as a whole. And like I said, continue to lean on that support. Right now, when I was in high school, I was raised by a cop at school. And I didn't know the rights as a student. I didn't know my rights as just a community member. So I had to face a felony charge. My parents just had to face an expulsion case for me while I was locked up for being based by a cop. So we didn't have the right resources and we didn't have the knowledge. So when Student Advocacy Center came in and gave us the resources and gave us the knowledge, that empowered us, that empowered me as a youth. So I continue to stay connected with them and build my knowledge as an advocate for peers like myself. And now, I am a youth organizer because I stayed connected and I've grown with that power. So yeah.
Thank you. Shira, as a young person directly engaged in a leadership role, how do you navigate spaces where your lived experience is valued rhetorically, but not always respected in decision making? Can you share a moment when you felt truly empowered versus one when you felt tokenized?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so my name is Shira, and I'm a youth with lived experience, and I would say it definitely is difficult showing up in these spaces and advocating. It's definitely hard going into any space and sharing your story or standing up for any sort of change. Like, I went into spaces thinking I'm like crazy for saying things or like crazy for advocating for certain things that are against the norm. So I would just say, like, being your most authentic self is what that looks like for you. That's the most important thing. Showing up into spaces where you are unapologetic for yourself. You're not afraid to say the truth. You're not afraid to speak your truth, because there's a lot of voices in these spaces that are trying to dim our voices, silence us, trying to get us to be in compliance. And I think that is where we need to rebel. That's where we need to stand up, and we need to be like, no, this is not right, or no, this is how I feel, because our voice and our authentic truth is gonna really make change. Like the way that we rebel against these structures and the way that we show up is going to essentially pave the way for a new future. And in regards to tokenized, yes. Being tokenized is also another thing with youth with lived experience. People want to see us but not really hear us, and kind of just allow us to be in the space just because we're a good sob story. But I just think, yeah, right. We are a good sob story, but I think that just navigating those spaces with awareness is the best part, is the best advice I would give.
Thank you. Carrie, you've built bridges across higher education and child welfare to support youth success beyond care. From vantage points, what role must adult allies play, not just in mentoring youth, but in ceding power to them? What does co-leadership truly look like when done right?
So my name is Carrie Rosen. I changed my name and I keep forgetting. Ridiculous. Carrie Rosen, and I'm Director of Fostering Success Michigan. which is a statewide initiative focused on college access and success for youth with experience in foster care. Thank you so much, Michael, for the wonderful questions. They're tough and they're necessary. So as far as, I've been thinking about lived experience and how, in the beginning when I started working for Fostering Success Michigan, we talked a lot about sharing your story. And then I think that we moved away from that. And we moved to sharing your lived experience. And now I'm hoping that we are at a place where now young people are driving the change. So whenever I think about people saying, we need young people at the table, okay, they own the table, and they're inviting us to it. If you're lucky enough to be a supportive adult or in this profession, and the young people are inviting you to the table, I think that you're on the right track. I'm not even necessarily gonna say that you're doing it right, because we're all trying to learn. But I think that that's really important, is like holding that space for the young people to drive the work. The same way that I approach the elevating the lived experience and the youth expertise, that drives the projects at Fostering Success Michigan as well. So a lot of times our young people are like, we should do this. And I'm like, oh, do we have to? Okay. We, really trying to defer to what they find most important. And my job is really to work for them and to do the best that I can as far as systems change and elevating their voices. So, thank you.
Awesome. Some of you guys that know me know that I adapt on the fly. I didn't expect for some panelists, but we're gonna start the questions with y'all. So, Corinne, what does empowerment means to you beyond the buzzword? How do we move from inspiration to institution to embedding youth leadership into the core of our systems, not just our events?
So hello everyone, my name is Corinne Barnett. I am a youth from Detroit, and I'm a part of an organization called 10 Heights, where I currently serve as the vice president, a board of directors member, and in a few short weeks I will transfer into the first official alumni president. Thank you. So what empowerment means to me beyond the buzzword is actually being there for the youth. Because you can say, oh, I'm empowering the youth, I'm reposting the thing, I'm sending out links, I'm doing this. But if you're not there, if you're not putting in the work, and if you're not there getting down and dirty with the youth, are you really empowering them if you're not there helping them along the way and pushing them through and telling them to persevere and keep trying? Because this whole process is not easy. It's not cut and dry. There's bumps in the road, and especially with being a young person in those shoes, you get discouraged very easily. But if you don't have those adults that have been in your shoes, been in the spaces that you wanted to be in, and they're not there constantly pushing, are you really empowering the youth? How do we move forward? What was the last part of the question?
Yeah, how do we move from inspiration to institution, embedding youth leadership into the core of our system, not just our events?
You have to start at the drawing board and prioritize the youth from the very beginning. You can't just have them as a token at the end, at the event. You have to have them in the planning process. You have to listen to them and their ideas, what they like, what they dislike, how they want the event to be ran. You just can't have them show up and have them say a few words on stage at the event and thinking that you did your job. No, they should be a part of the whole process in its entirety.
Thank you. Alexia. In what ways do you feel the youth experience is often misrepresented or misunderstood by adults and institutions, even those with good intentions? What do you wish more adults, partners would do differently when advocating with you, not for you?
I actually very like that question. I feel like a lot of the times when advocating, a lot of adults do try to help advocate for youth, But like you said, it's very important to advocate with them, not just for them. You have to make sure that the youth's voice is heard and that it matters and it's valued. A lot of times, when there's those powerful leadership roles, some adults do have the right intentions, but they're more so focused on just trying to get the word out. They're not actually giving the youth the opportunity to share their experience and their beliefs and what they feel like should really be happening. And I just feel like to advocate properly with youth, you have to actually give them the space. You have to trust that even though we're young, we're gonna make mistakes, but we know what we're talking about and we know what needs to be changed. So I feel like you just have to give them the space and opportunity and just let them share their voice.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna transition to some group questions. I just ask panelists, we take 1 minute so everybody can have a diligent response to it. So, starting off, whoever wants to go first, you just pass the mic. What does meaningful youth involvement look and feel like in practice? Can you each share an initiative or moment when youth voice didn't just shape a conversation, but actually shape the outcome?
I'd like to start if that's okay. A time that youth voice actually shaped the outcome, for me, that was memorable to me was when my team was Park West Foundation, empowering foster youth through technology. We presented in front of board members and we actually got a House bill passed, House Bill 4676, House Bill 4678, with Governor Whitmer. I feel like that really showed me the outcome, really, all the hard work really matters.
For me, I see outcomes of youth voice, I would say about every 3 months in our board meetings, because there's 3 youth board members along with myself, and they really listen to what we want and to what we want our program to look like and the future of our program to be. So I do see that they do take, our lovely board members, they do take into accountability what we're actually saying and not just having us in that room to fill up seats or just having us in that room to say, oh, we have you board members. They're actually diligently and actively listening to us and what we're saying, like, no, we don't like this. And sticking up for ourselves and what we believe in and pushing the initiative of youth advocacy.
I would say the biggest change I've seen, I would say definitely when we are on the Youth Action Board. So that's basically youth with lived experience. We're on a committee together and we get to decide like decision-making processes for things going on in different organizations like Ozone House, and we just get to be involved in the process of ending homelessness. And we did get a YHDP grant that the youth get to decide where that money is allocated and how we get to spend it, what organizations it goes to, and how much. So it's definitely a good process.
That's really awesome. So I work with Park West Foundation, and I think one of the things that was probably a challenge in this process for this question that you've asked is that even if you do great work and you get to really have the youth voice at the table and they're leading and all this other stuff, but if a tree falls, they say in the forest, and if nobody's there to see it, did it make a sound? You know, there's this question always. So after the young people really tell their stories, this is the beginning years ago, it was not going anywhere, who listened, and then what is the consequence of it? Because we don't want to repeat that same effort if there is no change. So I think that kind of propelled us to also figure out who should be at the table to make sure that we are heard beyond what they are saying. Because it doesn't make sense to keep saying the same thing if the power brokers and the decision makers aren't making the necessary systemic change. So there is something tangible that changes the young people's lives. So to ensure there's value in the effort that they have done, not just that they've done it, but that there is a response, a meaningful response and a meaningful change. So once we saw things could happen, once we saw that 11.5 million came down from the pandemic and got released, where legislators had no clue, didn't know what was going on, and the youth educated them, it was power. Once we've seen the stipend increase, the clothing allowance increase, this is like after 12 years, after 20 years, so it's like, okay, so we could do more. So it's just a confidence builder, but it's learning who should be there when that tree falls to know the sound was made. So the impact, not just doing the work, but ensuring we are truly heard by the powers to be.
Thank you. I actually forgot the question, but I have a response. Because I always have something to say. So going on what Saba said and thinking about who else needs to be at the table, what comes up for me is also making sure that our young people are connected to networks and supportive, like robust networks. And Michael, I thought of your story related to starting the campus-based support program at Mott Community College. This was definitely an example of Michael being connected to the larger network of campus support in the state while attending a school that didn't have that campus support. And he reached out to me and said, I'm at a college that doesn't have campus-based support, why? And so I was like, okay, well, find out who I talked to. And we sat and talked with the president of student services and started campus support at Mott. And I think that there are multiple levels of advocacy and ways that we can support our young people to drive change. And that was an example of on a campus level. We've heard examples of policy level. I mean, I think that they're all important. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Okay, to answer your question, I've seen, well, my name is Prestine from Student Advocacy Center. I've seen youth voices be in the center of conversations and the center of decision making and the center of action plans when it comes to planning and action and things like that. The outcome that I've seen recently, because I am a youth organizer, so I work closely with youth in Detroit area. So our youth worked with other organizations, if you know 482 Forward, and we had a school board candidate forum, which 500 youth community members attended, and that was all because of the youth. And that candidate forum was not just like a regular candidate forum, like a panel, and we just asked candidates, hey, why do you want to be a school board? But it was 22 people, and it was only 3 seats. So this was one of the most important school board candidates. And they was able to have 500 people there, and they wrote a play, and casted new actors, real actors for that play, and presented it to the 500 people, demonstrating the issues in the school, like funding, facilities, lack of resources when it comes to language barriers, things like that. And I seen that was something that was empowering me from the youth, because once we listen to the youth, we actually see all the things that they need and what their peers need for the people for the youth that don't have the voice or don't have opportunity to speak on their issues and stuff like that. And another thing that I've seen our youth do, they had 200 people at a school, it was a back to school event. And our youth was like, hey, we don't want to do a regular back to school event, we need hygiene products. And I never really thought about that for, teens and stuff like that, but that's something that every teen needs, is like hygiene products. And we was able to give hygiene products to 200 plus people, youth, and it was bras, things like that, and it was just like so empowering. So just having that youth voice at the table and in the center of everything.
Awesome, thank you. So switch it up a little bit, because I want to get all these questions answered. So do 3 responses per question. So whoever gets the mic first, let's share it and so forth. So our next question is: equity and inclusion are not destinations; they are daily decisions. What intentional steps can organizations take to create space for Black, Brown, LGBTQ+, system-impacted, and marginalized youth to not just survive, but thrive?
I would say especially in light of all of the executive decisions that are being made, I would say it's important now more than ever to openly accept people of all races, genders, LGBTQ community with open arms and not quietly, now we need to be open and we need to be rebellious about it and we need to actually stand out and say no, I don't care what decisions are being made, I'm still going to stand on this. And I also think that it's important to accept people as a whole instead of marginalizing them. We say black and brown people marginalized or LGBTQ marginalized. These people, they have been marginalized, but we need to accept them as regular. Does that make sense? They're not marginalized. They need to be accepted as people, period, and treated as such, treated as equal, treated as just people, period. So.
And just to piggyback off of what she said, when you accept them, understanding that they're not equal just because they're in the same community or in the same group. Each person is an individual and they have individual needs. So just because that I'm a brown girl and it's another brown girl, we're in the same program, that doesn't mean that we have the same needs, and that doesn't mean that we have the same equal opportunities, the same chances, and all of that. So just making sure that we are still being very intentional when we're accepting these kids, that we're not grouping them all as one and the same.
This has been a very important issue for us also, because we see statistically as well there's more children of color being overrepresented in foster care. The director of the Health and Human Services for Texas did a data as well where it showed whether the worker was black or white. Funds were put in to solve problems in white families to keep children together when they were put to remove black children from their families. And then once they come into foster care, the black kids stay in the most restricted institutions when other kids are able to get into families and be fostered in communities and be able to stay, in their school districts. So there were just so many, and there are still so many systemic issues that exclude kids. One of the issues that also got us focused with the education was that when we are working with our college prep program, that we could see kids who understood where they should be academically versus the other kids who are coming out of residential placements who don't have proper education and who don't even know what's going on and what grade they're in. We also had to do a college fair to be able to embrace specifically our black kids, because there's a statewide effort where there's an annual conference where majority of our black kids are excluded. That's from the Detroit area and other black areas. So when you see the statewide conference, we asked why we don't have so many Detroit or Wayne County kids represented. And we were told, hey, we send the same emails to everybody and this is just what we get. And we realized they weren't accessing information about college and about resources. So we started our own college fair in the Detroit area called Jumpstart Your Future. And we had an unbelievable number of black kids show up that were interested in college, that were interested in these resources. And we started to do that more annually. We kind of slowed down since the pandemic. But the systemic issues are so crazy and they're still there. But we know the same resources are not provided for everyone, and we're constantly trying to thrive. How do we address this? And the ideas are coming from youth. More needs to be done systemically, but we have shown or proven that some of the myths are wrong by simply doing the opposite. And more needs to be done, but we're striving thanks to the ideas that are constantly being presented by young people.
Just to wrap it up, I was just gonna say, invite youth at the table, invite youth at the school board, council meetings, to even call a legislator to tell their story, because this is the youth that's impacted, okay? And I think we should always center their voice, but also give them leadership opportunities that is gonna be healthy for their growth. and essential for their growth, because they are gonna be youth, but they're gonna be adults soon. So giving them that opportunity to be leaders, is always essential as well, that's all.
And my next question is, in what way have we seen youth transform not just programs, but entire systems? And how have those transformations challenged you to rethink your own approaches? Take your time. Feel it.
I can go, actually. So I think about, again, going back to how young people were represented within the work way back in like 2012, right? And now we're at a place where I feel like we've changed the environment of youth with experience in foster care. So I think about how you have a podcast, you have a company. We try to elevate our young people in a different way than what I ever saw, like when I first came into the work. And so I think sometimes when we get really frustrated and disappointed, because there are a lot of disappointing things where we're not moving the needle, I do think that there's been change there. And I think that thinking about what's next, what's coming, or the policy changes that are happening now, like that's one thing that we can hang on to. And that's one thing that we can continue to do, is to make sure that those stories, those voices are heard, despite whatever political outlook is happening.
I would also touch on this too, because so for my whole business and brand, my whole ideology is that we'll never be able to make systemic changes if we don't make individual changes first. So I think that what's really important for youth, like, yes, advocating is important, yes, having youth in leadership positions is essential and it's very needed, but we also need young adults, and we also need the example, like people doing the internal work first and healing from that first. Because we can advocate for stuff, but essentially, if we don't get to the root of the problem, then there's no changes being made. It's essentially slapping a Band-Aid on the issue, and then no change really happens. Like for example, homelessness, right? We want kids to not be homeless. We want youth to not be homeless, right? We give them shelter, we give them resources, we give them all of these things, but a lot of times what I've seen, especially being homeless myself, the initial barriers of what led to that in the first place are not being addressed. So you give a homeless youth, a person who's experienced homelessness their whole entire life, you give them a house. What do they do with it? How do they navigate that? How do we do this? How do I heal from all of the things that led me to that situation? So I think in order for us to see systemic changes, especially everything going on right now, we really need to look within.
I think one of the most encouraging things has been also to see foster youth in like really high decision-making places. When I actually was inside the White House, normally like when I go to the White House, I'm like outside as a visitor taking pictures. Because of our foster youth that was a leader that was doing the CCAI internship, another one you will be going there this summer, I was able to sit amongst the head of the, HHS and other leaders. But during that meeting, mind you, I'm a guest of my foster youth, you know what I'm saying? So I'm inside, I would have never been in there if it wasn't for her. So they are doing things, and there's so many of them in key places currently, making decisions. That's amazing and transformational. And I think as we're having more of those young people in different places, we're seeing systemic change. Like for example, one of the housing vouchers called Foster Youth Initiative that is like for about 3 years, in some cases 5, was a result of one of those people that worked under the HUD that explained that this is what we need, like a really fast-paced voucher. So now it's $25 million is coming in the year 2026. So these young people are impacting the work of others. There are many advocates even in Washington, D.C. that's doing work that when it comes here, we could follow the work. So there's more of them springing up, everywhere. So it's extremely encouraging to see that. Even with our own young people, like when we were inside the White House, they told us they hired one of the foster youth that came to the table. They were so sorry she couldn't be there to greet us because she was on assignment elsewhere. But she was a youth like them that came 2 years before. So these things are happening every day. And we have our own leaders, Brina right here, and many others, that are taking on serious positions that has a, power to influence and make change and impact. So it's working. It's slowly working, but we're not where we need to be, but we will be.
Thank you. So I have my last question here. And for the sake of time, I want y'all to, all to be able to share, but I just want us to be mindful so everyone can share. If there's one truth, one lesson, one call to action you want every attendee to carry forward after today, what would it be? What is your charge to those in positions of power who says they care about youth?
One thing I'd like to say for all attendees who care about youth and want to help advocate, especially, this is more so for the adults and less than the youth, but I know sometimes, especially in those powerful positions, it's very hard to trust the youth and just listen to their voice. But I've been in a few meetings with people who want to help us advocate, but they more so just like to say that we're in the room or that they're working with us. They don't actually want to hear what we have to say. And they kind of try to just shut us down and just hush us with a stipend and be like, okay, you're here, that's enough. But I feel like it's really important to actually give them the opportunity to speak their piece and open free dialogue of what actually needs to be changed and what needs to be seen done differently.
I would say work on yourself. We can't be in these positions. We can't, especially adults or youth, or adults being an example for youth, because we can't be in these leadership positions or pushing for systemic changes without being the systemic change. We can advocate for these things, like I said, but I really think the main factor for change is going to be the work that we do on ourselves, so we can be able to hold those positions and advocate for the change and be the people that we want to see in the world. Navi said that.
My thing would be to everyone, all the attendees, is to get in the field with the youth. Don't just stand there on the side being a cheerleader. Actually get down and work with them, advocate with the youth. My charge is, like my friend said here, go home and look within, because the work really does start within yourself. I think that for the adults in high places that have the resources, whatever that may look like to help, get off of your high horse and stop thinking that children can't teach you anything. A lot of the knowledge that most people acquire today literally come from kids. So don't think that you can't learn nothing from an 18-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, even a 10-year-old. Stop thinking that, because I promise you those kids are going to unlock something in your mind and in your world that is phenomenal, and without them you would have never known that. I just think that for the people that are doing the work, continue doing the great work that you're doing. Don't stop. I know you probably don't do it for the money. Do it because you love it and you want to see the youth progress. And thank all of you for coming and listening.
Y'all better listen. Y'all better go ahead. I appreciate y'all. And just as we close this panel, let me say this. Advocacy is not reserved for podiums, policy, or professionals. Advocacy is found in everyday courage to speak truth, stand tall, and stress systems that weren't built with us in mind. To the youth here today, know this: your voice isn't too small, too soft, too soon. It's sacred, it's timely, and it is powerful beyond measure. To the adults, our job is not to guide youth towards our version of success, but to walk beside them, to yield space and amplify without overshadowing, and to invest with humility. Let this not be the end of a panel, but the beginning of a promise to not just hear youth, but to heed them, to not just see them, but to stand with them, to not just empower them, but to elevate them permanently. Thank you. That concludes the panel. I thank y'all.
Thank you.
Like, I'm gonna go up there.
Here we go, we have a mic for you. Right here.
Don't run.
Awesome.
Am I too young to be?
That's the case. Continue. You're perfect.
Am I too young to be advocate?
You already are. You have the mic. You are an advocate. You were speaking up. You have the mic. That's all it takes. When you have an idea and you know how to, good ideas to solve problems right now, and you're not afraid to speak, you become an advocate. Perfect. Good question. Thank you. How old are you? How old are you?
I'm 9 years old.
Welcome to the team.
Any other questions in the audience?
Can I share a comment?
Go ahead.
So, I was thinking about, I've been on a lot of boards, and I've been involved in a lot of things over the last, parts of my career. And I've always tried to save a spot for youth. I'm an educator, so we're always talking about them, right? And there's a lot of pushback from people, I just call them grown-ups, right? Who don't think that's appropriate to have youth on boards. And I'm not saying anything that a lot of you don't know. And so I know the governor appoints people to many boards. Specifically, I'm thinking of higher education boards. And there are no kids, and I'm saying because I'm older than some of you on the left side there, but I think youth should be part of boards that are appointed. And I think you need to say, I want to be appointed by the governor to these high-level boards, because if she really believes in youth voice, then kind of puts her and anyone else, as governor, puts them in a spot where they have to either say, it's not really for you, or, yeah, let's open that door. And I think that would prevent a lot of things that we all know happen behind closed doors when youth are at the table. So it's great that you are creating spaces for yourself and doing advocacy. I love all of that, but I think also whoever is in the room, whoever of you think that might be appropriate, really should start pushing for getting placed on boards that are appointed and making high-level decisions in spaces that you care about.
We've had the same exact fight actually, and there are adults in very powerful positions who are offended that youth are asking to be at the table with them doing the work, and it's been shocking actually. The type of people who should embrace youth, but who go out of their way to literally silence youth and push them out. So we know the governor is like the next place, and we've already kind of started that conversation. Yes, so we already know, because that's the only way to have some coordinated supervision of people who almost, she said, get off your high horses, I think. Yes, people who truly feel like they are so above young people and they want to entertain them outside of the work, on the side where they can contain it and subjugate it, but not truly care on what you are saying because they have no ability to do the work with them or be seen or heard where it matters. Very, very sad actually. We've experienced that and our youth have fought against it. They've spoken against it on big stages. They've watched it with their eyes open. They've been on the news for it. Yes, they've gone up against like very powerful people and used their voice to do it, and they're right in the midst of it. So I'm really proud of them. Thank you for that. We know this is the only way we can get freedom.
That's some more. Thank you. Oh, more questions. I got a question for y'all three on this side. So like, how would y'all say?
Before you last question, I just want to make sure we stay on time and on the schedule. So last question, I'm so sorry, but one answer or this is gonna be short.
How do y'all keep y'all like cool, like that code switch? Y'all know what I'm talking about, like when it come down to being in those settings and you're going home and you still like in the storm, like it's still going on, like you're still living life, like life is still going. When you go to these places where you do have to put it to the side and you do gotta be that face for the youth, you do gotta fully put on that. How do y'all keep the code switch?
No matter what it is, not just in advocacy, you have to find something that grounds you, because a lot of it is just keeping your cool and keeping your composure. Because if I'm supposed to be a youth advocate, what do I look like? And just the second that something is said that I don't like, I go and I crash out on everybody. So I have to find something that grounds me. Maybe that's excusing myself politely for a few seconds, going to pray about it, deep breaths, a drink of water, whatever it may be, but I just have to remember I'm here for a reason, I'm put in this place for a reason, and I cannot squander my opportunity because there are many people who would fight tooth and nail for this spot and they're not here, so I need to make sure that I'm using this spot and I'm using it wisely.
I just want to leave y'all with this. Unfortunately, we do need to end. Nothing for us or about us without us.
Nothing without us about us.
So, you know, like, look, and at the end of the day, so if it's the Oval Office, if it's the governor's office, it's legislator, if it's, you know, leadership in MDHS, if it's nonprofit leadership, whatever it is, you know, this generation, my generation is coming past 27 now. You know, I'm no longer a youth, but the younger generation and the older generation of alumni and of people of care, we not just sitting idly by. We not just being quiet and just sitting there like, well, I guess we're gonna wait for this presidency to end. We still fighting, you know, and our voices will be heard. So thank you guys for attending. Thank you guys for your questions, and thank you guys.